it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello, so FPL return post-international break this weekend. We've managed to experience in the boom and bust associated with this infernal game we all have a pathological love-hate relationship with. It's very much Stockholm syndrome. It's awful. But anyway, it was a really busy weekend. Lots going on. In some ways, it showcased the best of FPL with swings galore and an abundance of dice men, notable differentials in many a team, creating those mixed fortunes. Let's talk about that, and more than anything, actually, to look ahead to the looming fixture congestion. With me, I'm of course joined by Sam. How are you, mate? All good?
Yeah, good, thanks. Although I did wake up this morning to the news that my local train station was literally underwater. Do go check that out on my handles if you get the chance. I was considering taking a kayak to work, but it was a little bit too far to go. So I actually got the joy of working from home today. So I'm a little bit less flustered, a bit more ready and set for this podcast today than usual, because it is usually a bit of a tight turnaround. So yeah, very relaxed, decent game week as well. So yeah, hopefully all good vibes only on the pod today. We are, as always, Who Got the Assist. On today's pod, we'll be going through team updates to begin with. And then, as promised last week, we'll be previewing the upcoming congestion period with 3 game weeks now in just 7 days to come. We'll have a look at that and figure out how we're approaching teams with good, bad, and mixed fixtures. In the preview, there's news of an early transfer in the Kneejerk and a discussion on whether or not doing that now at this point in the season is a wise thing to do or not. And then, of course, we'll be looking at all the best transfers, best captains, and bold claims ahead of Game Week 13. It's Monday, the 25th of November. It's halftime in the Newcastle-West Ham game, 1-0 West Ham at halftime. Second half will be playing out as we pod. So if you get any screams or cheers in the background, that is because either Isaac or Hall has done something positive or negative, because of course, Tom, we both own them, or we both own both of them. In the meantime, shall we have a look at those game week reviews?
Yes. I think things are looking a little bit better, aren't they, in terms of the game week reviews? If we can, so I'll go. I think it's me first, isn't it? So, I mean, last week, I think there were loads of conversations surrounding big hits flying around, lots of different things we could possibly do. And, when it came down to it, I had lots and lots of different routes I was staring at towards the end of last week. And we were talking with Sam about what we could do and all the different manifestations and the different knock-on effects. And I was saying last week, a -8 for Garnacho and Johnson to Saka and Matoma on top of Trent to Hall, which is kind of where I went over Colwill. That would have paid off, wouldn't it? But I didn't do that. Something unexpected ended up being sort of the move I did, which was to go back to 3-4-3 and take Isaac in for my dud third forward Ross Stewart. The money that I made from selling Trent all the way down to Hall enabled that. So the moves ended up being Trent and Stewart, neither of whom were playing out to Hall and Isaac, and Garnacho moved to bench 1. There's a story about that in a minute. So basically, the whole kind of thinking was, an FPL review backed me up on it, which was quite good. I'm starting to listen to it a bit more now. But the idea was that I simultaneously obtained a coveted forward target. Tonight, he's been very close already in the first half. Upgraded and deepened my bench and sold 2 non-playing players, which seemed worth it to me for a hit. The only problem here is that the move for Saka is now delayed a week. My route there is selling Bumo, but I'm not going to do that this week, obviously, with Leicester. But I went into that kind of eyes wide open. It might end up kind of costing me a little bit more. So I may have to make allowances for that too in my transfer planning, which we'll talk about later on. But yeah, a decent-ish week overall. 70 points for me, minus 4. And that's not including Isaac and Hall. So I'll be on 72 now, I guess. Captain Salah obviously came through. I have Cunha, and that kind of counts as being probably one of the best signs I've ever made, I think. 28 points from the Wolves talisman the last 2 weeks versus 4 for Haaland. 1.3 XGI for Cunha to score that versus just 2.3 for Haaland. Wow. Anyway, so that obviously carrying my week. Double Arsenal clean sheet came through too. The main sort of kind of little wrinkle this week as well was I benched Garnacho expecting him not to start, and he did. And I played Johnson expecting him to start, and he didn't. But I got it right in terms of the points outcome. Hooray! Johnson scored in the 94th minute or something like that, and Garnacho blank. So very lucky, but I'll take that as a sign my process was rewarded, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty good from like kind of nearish a million to 650. I think I'm kind of a bit further up now, actually. Maybe kind of if Isaac scores a goal, he's a dice man this week, and if that's assisted by Hull, then they're looking at kind of top 500k by the end of the week. So rank Harver, yeah, really good week overall. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I was glad you corrected yourself there by saying to start with it was decent-ish, and you've gone up. Well, you've taken a third off your rank at the least. So I would say it's a very good week, if not amazing. But yeah, very positive from you there, Tom. And hopefully the second half will give you a little bit extra. Hopefully it does the same for me. Still the 2 to play, or still playing right now. Starts off with a similar story. I took a -4. I did have the extra free transfer though, so I made 3 moves. Those were pretty much the moves that I was touting on the pods, or at least 3 of the 4. So the ones I went ahead with was to get rid of Erling Haaland finally, and bring in Isak for him, upgrade Johnson, who did actually score, but I felt vindicated in the fact that he was benched in the first place, which was a bit of a surprise for me. Palmer came in, got pretty unlucky, I would say, considering his own teammate cleared it off the line, to not get anything there. And I also brought in Lewis Hall for what I counted as the hit, basically. I wasn't going to really start Mikalenko anyway. I thought Brentford, considering their underlying attacking data, were likely to score. Didn't end up that way. But my process would have probably been to start Lewis, which would have been a 0-pointer. So I don't feel too bad about that, although obviously Lewis Hall has already conceded today. So I'm banking on an attacking return for that to pay off. But overall, I think the process was pretty decent. It sets me up nicely for the weeks to come. It gets a defensive transfer out the way, which I really needed to make because it was starting to look pretty ropey. And still, arguably, there are 1 or 2 issues in my backline anyway. One of which is definitely not Pedro Porro, though, who I have to say, I don't think I've been so happy about an FPL return all this season. It's definitely the highlight of my season so far. Started him. A lot of people were also calling me out and saying what a stupid decision that was to start him. Well, he scored, got a clean sheet, and got 2 bonus. So 14 points from him. Feel very, very vindicated in starting him. Obviously, you never bank on Tottenham keeping a clean sheet away at the Etihad, but getting the attacking return was really special, and especially because it was assisted by Dominic Solanke, who I also started, rather than opting for an extra hit to bring in the likes of João Pedro or Cunha. Now, obviously, either of those would have paid off the extra hit, but still, getting a return in my forward line with Solanke away at the Etihad, not too bad. Salah cap, happy enough there. 63 points net at the moment and 2 players to play. Taken a couple of 100,000 off my rank at least. Hopefully, I can scrape inside the top million if Isak gets a return in the second half. But yeah, overall, not too bad. Little green.
Yeah, very nice. I mean, I think finally kind of getting rid of Haaland's it's just, I don't know what it is at the moment. I saw the FPL Joe Linton post on Blue Sky that since game week 6, the XG for Haaland versus Salah has been 6.23 versus 5.69. The FPL points, 21 for Haaland, 69 for Salah. I mean, this is the first week I've captained him actually, but still, it's just wild the swing there. And I do feel sorry for people who have kept Haaland because it was one of those games, wasn't it? I think he missed 2 big chances, didn't he? Before,
yeah,
2 chances, wasn't he missed before the first Maddison goal? Like, it's just insane. I'm sure it will come back round. But there's never been kind of a lower risk time, has there, to move him on? And yeah, a lot of sympathy for those who did go and captain because, you know, much like it has been the last few weeks, another day you're sat there feeling fine as it is. You're not really laughing, are you? But yeah, decent week for both of us. Let's just hope the second half works out well. Cool. All right. So this week we've called this one prepping to cook because we always say that FPL hits fast forward at this point. There's 3 game weeks in 7 days, in game weeks 13, 14 and 15. Very exciting because obviously as engaged FPL managers, we're hoping that this is the time we shine as our extra attention and squad planning hopefully pays dividends. On screen if you're watching on YouTube, we'll talk it through, of course, if you're listening on the pod. They are all the teams arranged by Team XG within 3 categories. If they're broadly good, mixed, or bad set of fixtures in the next 4 weeks, we're going to take the next 3 as well as the following one in game week 16, just because that kind of gives us a nice 4. And we're doing Christmas with FPL General soon after that as well, as we do every year. So that will kind of be covered then. Plus, we also identify the top player for underlying stats, top FPL point scorer so far. And it also shows you if it's the same or different. I'll post this on socials as well as people can see it. And obviously, I did this today before West Ham and Newcastle played tonight. So if you are watching on YouTube wondering how the hell the data looks okay, I've extrapolated the data a bit to make it fair. And that's by adding 1/11th of the existing scores, both Team XG, Player XG, and points to what's there to bring it in line. Not perfect, but it just gets the sample universe aligned. So yeah, a lot to cover here, and another whistle stop tour of our approach to FPL assets. And to do this without a 3-hour show, we're going to intensely home in on the key FPL assets with some discussion of the edge pieces here and there, of course, as well as the premiums. Let's maybe go just good, bad, and mixed for the discussion flow, and go on the open road, I suppose. So I think there's broadly basically it's just the FDR. I haven't done my 3-point fixture thingy anymore. I've just taken the FDR. But there's 6 teams who broadly have a good next little while over the next 4. That's Chelsea, Arsenal, Brighton, Wolves, Leicester, and Ipswich. To take the top of that in terms of the Team XG rank, it is Chelsea, who have Aston Villa at home, Southampton away, Tottenham away, and Brentford at home. Palmer is the top underlying and top point scorer at the moment. But, Sam, he's not looked particularly on it, has he, the last few weeks?
Yeah, I don't know if that's completely fair. I think he still looked pretty good. The returns, a bit like Erling Haaland, just haven't really been coming recently. He's had some tougher games as well to deal with. I think a few famously on Twitter or Blue Sky have been saying about the fact that the fixtures haven't been great recently. And he is usually a bit of a flat track bully. So it goes to show, hopefully, with the fixtures turning, that he will be a pretty decent pickup. But the data's still looking decent. Obviously, got one cleared off the line that 99 times out of 100, Madueke's not stood right in front of him. No. So on a different day, we probably wouldn't even be having this discussion. But as it is, Jackson has returned well in the previous match. Palmer hasn't. So questions do get asked. But it feels very sort of swings and roundabouts. Like, it does come back around to Palmer inevitably being one of the best assets in the game, I feel. And I don't think he's ever too far away from that haul. And if he got just the goal against over the weekend, then I would imagine he'd be right at the top of the captaincy poll for this week, or certainly in the conversation, and most people wouldn't be too worried about him. So as a new owner, I wasn't put off by the recent form when I bought him. In fact, the fact that he maybe hadn't scored more recently was maybe quite helpful, because otherwise he would have been 100% owned and I would have been literally the last player in the universe to have gotten to him. So yeah, I've still got high hopes for him and Chelsea in general. So Jackson included in that, but yeah, I still don't mind Palmer whatsoever at the moment.
No, fair. But I do think it's just something about the positioning in the game. I think
I'm not too worried about that.
I kind of saw like 70 minutes of it, and he did look a bit more withdrawn. I don't know what that was. So hopefully, as you say, it will kind of all revert back fairly soon. Chelsea, as we've been signposting for an awfully long time, have got a run of fixtures all the way to March, I think it is, where they've only got kind of Man City. I think they've got a Spurs away in there, maybe a Villa away in there as well, if I remember correctly. But the whole run is great. And you're right, they're looking at Jackson, who's actually currently second for non-pen XG, got better non-pen XG than Palmer by like 1-ish, 1.3 I've got written down here. I think it's about right. It's definitely in mind. Did go for Isaac just because I felt the fixtures were a little bit better, I think, over the next little while, but it is very close. It really is. And I think that the 4 yellow cards perhaps has a bearing on that too. And I suppose just beyond that, trying to figure out what the edge pieces are for Chelsea, because you probably want 2, maybe 3 for the fixtures, just for the long-term run. I did mention last week that I was really interested in Colwell, for example, just for kind of a bit of a boring sort of longer-term pick, who's still on radar for me. Just it might be someone else from a different team who also have a good run of fixtures who comes in. But yeah, I mean, what do you make of the extra? Is it kind of Jackson and then maybe one of the boring defenders, or... Yeah, I suppose it is just Jackson, isn't it? It's the only one you can really go for other than Palmer, if you're not kind of too interested in a steady Eddie defender.
Yeah, and I'm not really that interested in a steady Eddie defender right now. We talked about Colwill last week, but looking at the fixtures to come and looking how inevitable it seems that they make at least one error a game at the moment that's leading to a goal or a very big chance. Those next four, from a defensive point of view, Aston Villa, Southampton, Spurs and Brentford, I'm not really seeing where the clean sheets are coming in that run. So I'm not massively keen on bringing in a defender right now, especially someone like Colwill who doesn't have the upside to pair with the defensive capabilities. So I think it's probably one I'm going to swerve. I would love Jackson. I've just gone through the pain, I suppose you call it, of Semenyo getting his 5th yellow card. And it's not ideal when it happens. So if you are going to go there, just do make sure you've got that 8th attacker sat on your bench ready to come in at probably the least convenient time possible. So yeah, I mean, Jackson, if you can afford to go there, I love it. But do be aware that there's going to be 1 game week's worth of pain probably somewhere in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And outside of that, I don't really see too many interesting options. I think maybe if Enzo keeps playing in that sort of dual 10 role alongside Palmer, possibly if Felix also gets decent minutes, maybe. But I get the feeling all of those players outside of Jackson and Palmer are just going to get their minutes managed over this period. And I don't want to be taking those sort of risks on players that I just can't be that confident on.
Yeah, I think in my the fat 3-4-3, I'm going to end up on. I think someone like Enzo is in that sort of category as the kind of the 5th midfielder who is going to be sat first bench and could play sometimes, if he has to come off the bench. But yeah, you're right. It really does feel like you've homed in on those two, and that kind of feels okay. Like if you've got a Sanchez or you went for Colwill last week, absolutely fine, have and hold. But yeah, it definitely feels very sort of intensely focused on 2 players. Not so much maybe for Arsenal though. I'm seeing a lot of people go for the triple defence, which is very cool. If you do go there, and obviously Saka, a smattering of Havertz is around, although Havertz was on the bench. Arsenal currently 2nd for TNXG amongst the good category, that is, with a decent run next. West Ham, who are currently beasting Newcastle 2-0. Man United at home in midweek, Fulham away, Everton at home. Broadly makes them good, and Saka top underlying, top for FPL points too. I think that's probably, he came back not looking like he was injured at all. So yeah, all that fuss is nothing. One of those that, much to my chagrin, I prioritised getting Isak in over him, and now I've got to wait for a couple of weeks. But no, dems the breaks, and I wouldn't have got him before. So I mean, people are in different positions here, Sam. We've obviously kind of kept the faith, as it were, with double defence. Others maybe are kind of making a choice between bringing Saka in or bringing in an extra defender. The run kind of suits fairly well for an awfully long time. As we all know, Arsenal had a really bad start to the season in terms of the fixture ticker. We've gotten all of our hard fixtures out of the way pretty much, especially the away games. And this is the time, I think, that things are going to start churning. So I think, you kind of need 2 Arsenal defenders, don't you, really, to benefit? But there could be some opportunity in going for maybe the double attack too. But bear in mind, obviously, that Havertz was benched.
Yeah, I think recently, this week, I would have probably gotten benefit off of just 1 Arsenal defender, given the mass exodus from them over the last few weeks, and rightfully so, not keeping any clean sheets. But the data's always still been pretty decent. And I think that now they've kept even 1 singular clean sheet, it's not going to take much for managers to go back there, especially when most other defenses aren't performing at the level you'd want them to for that sort of price bracket. So the likes of Gabriel, Raya, Saliba, even Timber and Calafiori as slightly more cut price options will be popular. And I don't think you'll get any benefit anymore. You'll probably just be treading water if you have the 1 Arsenal defender, which is fine, by the way. If you think they're just going to tick along and you want to use that extra money because they're not cheap for defenders, then use that extra money elsewhere and just take your coverage for the defense over the next few. That's fine. But I think over the next 4, but then also you can stretch that out to the next 6. There's a decent chance of 4 clean sheets in that next 6, in my opinion. So, and arguably, it's not even impossible that they could keep a clean sheet in any one of those next 6 games. Man United at home probably being the toughest, but you wouldn't be massively shocked if they managed to pull it off there. So I think they're going to make a lot of sense to double up on, because no other real defenders around that price point are giving us the confidence levels we want. And a lot of the 4.5s you can stuff on your bench most weeks. Outside of that, though, it's whether or not you want to throw all of your eggs into that basket, which, okay, if you're very bullish on the defense, that again makes sense potentially. But I do think that Saka in particular is going to be one of the most explosive picks over the next pretty extended stretch and beyond the next 4 or the next 6. So I do want a way to get back to him. My transfers will be with a mind on how I do get back to him over the next few game weeks. And I feel pretty comfortable just with the double up. I don't think I need to take it to a triple up. And I do want a chunk of the Arsenal attack because, as you mentioned, of the teams with the best fixtures, so the 6 that we're talking about right now, they are the team with the second highest XG in that. And Saka, even without necessarily the XG data, is also putting up the creative threat too. And with Ødegaard back in the side, I imagine that gets bolstered over the next few weeks as well. So I think the perfect combination for me is double defense with a Saka. But triple defense, if you're really bullish, could work too.
Saka's second for expected assisted goals for this year. And yeah, I mean, I backed him at the start of the season. One of my season on bold claims that this is the season he was going to take over Mo Salah. Well, it's not quite happened yet, Sam. I'm going to say that. And I think our attack in general just has been kind of compressed a little bit by the fixtures that we've seen. But you're completely right that the return of Ødegaard in particular should galvanise that attack. Obviously, a bit frustrating that I've had to kind of leave it. I have to leave him for the West Ham game, although West Ham are imperious at the moment. So who knows? Maybe it won't be kind of as it is. But yeah, so many routes to points for Saka. And it just kind of feels like, even though there are kind of a few different ways you could play it, it does feel like the 2 defensive assets, be they Raya and Gabriel, or Gabriel plus another like Jurrien Timber, had a goal chalked off and did appear in some kind of quite wild positions over the weekend. So maybe could be one for you if you want to kind of do that. If you've got like a Bruggen, or you just don't want to make a goalkeeper transfer, which is fair enough. I mean, the only thing with Saka that I've heard some people say is that, hey, you know what, he's just too expensive for a player I'm probably not going to be captaining that often, which is something I do sort of understand, Sam. It's just one of them where you look at kind of his consistency. Yes, there are kind of a few explosions in there, here and there, but it is that consistency, isn't it? Like, he just raises the floor of your team every week, and owning him, even though you probably won't see like any sort of real quorum of people captaining him every week to make it incredibly freshening. I can see his kind of ownership raising throughout this next sort of period, and him just being a bit of a mainstay in our teams pretty much for the rest of the season, right? So I know it sounds pretty boring, but it's one of them that it probably doesn't really seem worth taking on, does it?
Yeah, not for me anyway. And I would fight back a little bit at people saying you're not going to ever captain him. I think his floor is now high enough and he is consistent enough that I would feel fairly confident captaining him. He's been maybe less likely to haul than someone like or less explosive than someone like a Palmer or a Haaland or a Salah in the past. But those explosive returns are usually, other than Salah this season, fairly hard to predict and fairly rare. So if you want that more consistent 8 to 10 points a game, which he seems to be doing pretty comfortably right now on the most part, especially with the good fixtures to come, then I think that Saka's absolutely fine to captain. And like you say, even if you're not, or even if it's a one captaincy in every 3 or 4 weeks, because of the structure of a lot of our teams right now, a lot of us going without Haaland, it does make that third premium midfielder just that little bit more affordable. And especially with the likes of a João Pedro or a Cunha up top providing the goods at a cheaper price, you can get a balanced squad with Saka in it without necessarily having to rely on him as your standout premium captaincy choice every single week. You can have 2 or even 3 of them. So yeah, for me, I'm very, very keen to bring him in as soon as possible, especially in this fixture period where you are looking for those consistent talismanic 90-minute men or close enough to 90-minute men that rarely seem to be missing minutes or missing matches. And he really does fit all of that, all of those categories. And the fact he's on penalties is just another bonus. So yeah, I would be more than happy to have him and captain him in any given game week.
Cool, fair enough. Third one, Brighton, who I've got by I'm looking at buying 2 of them, to be honest, this weekend. Not just because of you guys, just because, again, long-term fixture run coming, and a very good next 4: Southampton at home, Fulham away, Leicester away, and Palace at home for that motorway derby. Good run of fixtures. Matoma is now the top for the underlying data. Welbeck still out front for the FPL numbers. The first team for whom it doesn't quite match up. I mean, Matoma is it's just in front of Welbeck by 0.1 in terms of underlying data. Very, very close. But yeah, lots of interest obviously in João Pedro, who may well have entered in one of our teams. Lots of cooks there who may well spoil the broth at some point, because there are fixtures piling up and they've got a depth of quality that can be brought in at any time. But nonetheless, it does feel a little bit dangerous to go without at the moment, especially just due to the nature of the interest in João Pedro, certainly. In terms of team stats, the defence is actually pretty good as well. They're 5th for XUC for this year. Are they 5th? No, they're not. They are... no, they're not actually anywhere near as good as I thought they were. I was thinking something else. Sorry, ignore that bit. The defence, I think, should pick up a little bit. I think over the course of the good fixtures, the good fixture run lasting pretty much all the way until, I think maybe all the way till I'm pretty sure it's like April or something ridiculous like that. So yeah, these are the kind of the edge pieces, I guess, that we spoke about a few weeks ago. Now's the time before the Southampton game to jump on, as we saw with Cunha, who we'll mention in just a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Brighton have been really generously priced across the board this season, partly because there are so many assets in there in the attacking lines that FPL, I guess, just didn't know which ones to kind of throw their weight behind and say these are going to be the consistent starters, therefore we'll price them higher. But one player that I think we all agreed the second the pricing came out that was underpriced was João Pedro, who has historically been on penalties, really good underlying data. In fact, 8-9 million's worth of underlying data if he's getting the minutes. And when he's consistently getting those minutes, there's not many better picks in the game. As we've seen in the last 2 game weeks, he doesn't even need 90 minutes to be getting returns. So I'm very bullish on João Pedro at the moment. Yes, there will be maybe 1 or 2 rotations in there. That midweek fixture might be slightly risky, but if I could take 65, 70 minutes against Southampton to then guarantee the start against Fulham, I would be more than happy with that. And then Leicester after that as well. So yeah, I think that the fixtures balanced with the fact that the price point of Pedro in particular, but also other Brighton assets, make them incredibly tempting as those edge pieces, as we talked about the other week. And if you can have them as your 7th or 8th attacker, then it's easy enough to rotate them out of the side if rotation strikes in their side. So yeah, João Pedro, very bullish. Data's great. Mitoma as well. Minutes are probably a little bit more secure, but the data's obviously nowhere near as good as João Pedro, and he doesn't get the penalties either. So a little bit of a head versus heart there, but I think João Pedro as a 3rd striker, there's not really any better option out there right now for his price.
No, it does depend whether you've gone in terms of the strikers, where you've gone with it, I suppose, a little bit. So my front 3, Cunha, Isak, Solanke, are all kind of there for different reasons. Solanke X-Mins, Cunha X-Mins, and then Isak for what I thought was kind of quite a good explosive asset in form. For me, I am looking at Mr. Mitoma for reasons I mentioned last week. 1 shot, 1 goal in the last game. So he's dangerous, Sam. But I mean, there was a red card, so you can't really legislate for that too much. I mean, really, these are the definition of edge pieces, aren't they? They are the sorts of players who you bring in and just hope will do a decent job for you, as and when they're needed, as you kind of touched upon. And yeah, I mean, I had João Pedro to start the season. I think he's a great sort of... He's underpriced by at least $1 million. So, I mean, that's absolutely fine, absolutely great and dandy. And it feels as a kind of incumbent upon me to be bringing in a Brighton attacking asset just to try to contest that a little bit. And I think Mitoma is a good enough option as well on that side. But yeah, it's notable, isn't it, for the per 90 data? João Pedro is on 0.73 returns per 90, which is really, really good. Defensively, it's boring picks. I'm looking at Van Hecke, for example, this week. I'm not excited by it at all. It's the same sort of vein as Colwell or something like that. It's just a long-term fixture run, and the fact that they can kind of slot in or come out, depending on your other defenders. It's all part of kind of a bit of a fairly gauche rotation, effectively, throughout Christmas. And he's probably as close to a 90-minute man as you can get. Igor is doing pretty well in Dunk's absence, and don't know what's going to happen there. Whereas Van Hecke seems to have kind of just plodded along effectively, playing every 90, apart from when he was injured, I believe, towards the end of for game week 6-ish. But yeah, not very exciting, is it?
Yeah, no, it is a bit boring. Although it does make a lot of sense. I think most managers were probably hopeful that Dunk would come back in and be, I think, 0.1 cheaper than Van Hecke. So could have been a cheaper pickup for Brighton and a bit of an opportunity. Obviously, a lot of us have decent memories of Lewis Dunk from seasons past. So yeah, a bit unfortunate that he wasn't even in the squad this weekend past. So it seems relatively unlikely he comes straight back in against Southampton on Friday. But I would be surprised if he doesn't just immediately earn his spot back when he is fully fit again. I think it is Van Hecke and Dunk alongside each other. I don't have too many worries about Igor necessarily. But yeah, like you say, they are fairly boring picks with not spectacular underlying data at the moment. It's just a fixtures play. And at 4.5 or 4.4, I think that's fine. I think if you're looking for someone just to plug a gap, be that fourth defender or even fifth if you're going really deep, that makes sense. So yeah, I don't hate it, but I wouldn't be ripping up my team to get to them. It's more of an opportunistic thing where you've got a problem in your back line and you're looking for the next 4.5 that could pick up some points over the next stretch. Brighton are probably a decent team to look at.
Yeah. Similar to Colwell, you're not expecting very much, but you're just kind of going with the probability that a good run of fixtures is hopefully going to elicit at least a clean sheet here or there. Wolves, Sam, I think we can kind of curtail this to probably conversation about one man, maybe two, maybe misrate Nori, but yeah, Bournemouth at home, Everton away, West Ham away, and Ipswich at home. Obviously, a great run of fixtures. Cunha, top for underlying data and top FPL point scorer, 70 points he's got now. Last two games have been a pretty wild ride. I mean, the guy just carried me this week, honestly, and it's been. I mean, he's just a quality player. Like, he was always very, very good on Football Manager. Like, one of those players that I love signing, eventually would become an elite striker and would just do a fantastic job for you. But playing that sort of reminiscent of Kane almost, a number 10 role, just pulling all the strings and doing everything at the moment. He's just so good. Would you jump on now, though, with the two games gone and the two halls gone, or would you be looking elsewhere? I'm interested because obviously I know you don't own him.
Yes, I would. 100%. No questions asked. I would definitely jump on him right now. The fixtures, the next 5 are still good. So Bournemouth, I have no worries about at home. Everton, obviously 2 clean sheets on the bounce, but I still wouldn't exactly be scared of them as a defensive proposition for Wolves to play against. And then followed by that is West Ham, Ipswich, and then after that, I can't remember off the top of my head. Is it Leicester by any chance? It's a very good fixture run for the next 5. It tails off Leicester. It tails off after that a little bit, but it's still, I believe, Aston Villa followed by Man United after that. So I basically, the reason I know this and the reason that I'm so ready to answer this is because he is quite likely going to be one of the routes that enables me to get to Saka in a week or two. And looking at the other options in and around his price point, I just don't think anyone else ticks as many of the boxes for me as he does. He's so important to everything they do. They don't get a high amount of XG, but the XG they do get, almost all of it goes through him. And like you mentioned Kane, and I would agree with that. The other player that I think he does remind me of a little bit is last season's Cole Palmer, just dropping in off the number 9 a little bit and getting into those little pockets of space in and around the centre forwards. Absolutely love that. And Cunha at the moment is at the heart of everything good Wolves do. They themselves haven't actually looked too bad over the last couple of game weeks either. And now the fixtures have improved. it goes to show that maybe they're not such a bad side overall. So, yeah, I still think now is a good time to be buying him. I wouldn't look too far in the future just yet and say, oh, but in 7 game weeks time, the fixtures turn. I think you make it work for you now rather than wait a couple of game weeks or in the next 2 weeks, let's say, and just enjoy the points, because I think they're going to continue coming for Cunha.
Yeah, a second for bonus throughout, just raw bonus for the season.
Yeah, phenomenal bonus.
4 for underlying. It really is a case that it's not even just that a goal is a 7-point goal. It's like an assist is basically a 4.5-point assist at the moment, because he's just doing everything in the Wolves team. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier. It's just one of those amazing transfers. That does happen. After kind of Boxing Day they play Man United, just before the end of the year is Spurs, and then there's Forest, and then after that the fixtures do get a bit dicier. So, I mean, just there's still gains to be made in terms of owning, as you've kind of mentioned, Sam, and still gains to be made in terms of value as well. There will be a point, obviously, where it's kind of like, oh, is it time to get rid of him now? Just like we've seen with Mbumo, or we'll see with Mbumo next week. So, but at the moment, really good. Ran wise, I voiced my skepticism about owning him. I think at 4.8 now it's just too much, even though he does adopt those kind of Alonso Estepinian-esque wild positions. So it just seems a bit too much for me in a team that's not going to be keeping clean sheets necessarily.
Yeah, I think the upside's definitely there for Aït-Nouri, but I'm not convinced on the clean sheets at the moment. And although the next patch of fixtures, like we just discussed, are good, I can see them conceding in most of them, and then you're really banking on the attacking returns coming through. I still don't think he's a bad pick. I probably would look at him as an option at around that price point, but because he's had a couple of price rises now, you do have to weigh that into your thinking, and moves do get a bit tighter if you're spending that extra 0.2, 0.3 on him. So if you've already got him, undoubtedly a hold, but is he a buy right now? I think again, it's opportunistic. You don't go out of your way to get him, but
no.
If there's an obvious transfer to be made, maybe Lewis Hall's your third defender and you don't have any alternatives, then maybe Aït-Nouri could be a good pickup. And yeah, I don't think he'll be bad over the next few, but a bit less like Cunha. When the fixtures start to turn, Aït-Nouri will much more quickly become a quite poor FPL asset, whereas Cunha, his potential is still not so bad because he can always score a goal in any game, whereas Aït-Nouri, that's a lot lower odds, and then the clean sheets are going to be very few and far between anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Next to are Leicester and Ipswich. I think that we can kind of safely say that both these are both don't buy, don't sell if we're narrowly focusing in on FPL assets. I mean, if you're kind of sat with, I don't know, I've got Leif Davis, for example. You've got Greaves, who's still not back fit. If you've got Delap, for example, the next 4 for Ipswich, Forest away, Palace at home, Bournemouth at home, Wolves away. I believe George Hurst is now injured, so I think that's absolutely fine. He seemed like he could have got another haul actually against United. There were 2 big chances that he missed. One was created by Davis, which is obviously a bit annoying. But then, if it's out of Leicester, I don't know what he'd have for Leicester. Maybe a Fass just hanging around just in case.
Definitely not starting.
No. I mean, they've obviously got a new manager, so potentially there could be a new manager bounce. So Brentford, West Ham, Brighton, and Newcastle, the next 4 kind of narrowly just about got into the good for me, just because the Brentford game, I thought, that's actually quite a good attacking game at the moment as it is. But not a kind of okay, maybe, as that sort of fifth midfielder in a 3-4-3. But yeah, these are very don't buy, don't sell, aren't they?
Yeah, I honestly, this is going to be a long show if we start talking about all of the prospects of Leicester and Ipswich players. So, yeah, outside of Delap, who I don't mind as a budget pickup, no one of interest at all for either of these sides. Even with good fixtures, Delap's the only one I'd even maybe give a passing glance to.
Yeah, Leif Davis is obviously okay, but you're not going to be.
If you've got him already,
it's the same as Aït-Nouri. You're not going to be out your way to buy him, right? So that's the good. It just very much sounds like with Chelsea, Palmer obviously get hold of. You probably want him for the midweek, that's for sure. Jackson, of course. Arsenal, it really does feel like the best config is the double defense and Saka. But if you do go for triple defense, good luck to you. It sounds like a really good idea. Brighton, edge piece provision across the defence to the attack. Wolves, all about Cunha. Leicester and Ipswich. forget it. Basically, unless you already own one, in which case that's quite good because it's a nice little edge piece, but I wouldn't be going there. In the mixed, Man City, Sam, I'm looking to divest entirely. So obviously sold Haaland a couple of weeks ago, got Lewis left hanging around, probably be looking to get rid of him as well. Unsurprisingly, top for Team XG overall and top for Team XG amongst the mixed. But Liverpool away next is a really good kind of excuse to sell any Man City players you now currently have, unless you're keeping faith with Haaland, which you can kind of understand. Top for the underlying, of course. Throughout the Premier League, he's top for underlying, which will surprise nobody. And he's also top for FPL point scorer for City. Liverpool away, Forest at home, Palace away, Man United at home. It does feel like it's the time to jump off a lot of these players, doesn't it, right now? With an eye on game week 18, I think it is, when they've got Everton at home and they've got a nice kind of little run again, where we'll all be kind of scratching our heads thinking, do I get Haaland now? Although Chelsea, Liverpool and Arsenal will have good fixtures around them as well. So maybe it's not as cut and dried. And maybe the big man doesn't have to come in again for the rest of the season. I'm sure he will come in at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying goodbye to him completely, but it does make sense unless you're extremely bullish on Haaland and you're just willing to ride it out, hoping that he does return almost all of the expected returns from recent weeks. It kind of all comes back to parity, which obviously can happen, but he was running far ahead of his XG to begin with, and now he's kind of running level right now. Erling Haaland's never going to be a bad pick. He's always going to score points, but the question is for me, and the reason I ended up selling him, is how many of these game weeks am I actually going to even consider captaining him in? I would say one of the next 5, and that would be game week 15. In game week 15, they play Palace away from home. Liverpool play Everton away from home. Chelsea play Tottenham. There are other options there as well. So even in the week where they've got probably the best fixture of this little patch of less than decent fixtures, I would still probably look at other captains anyway. And again, like, it's easy to just batch him in with the other premiums, but he is another 2 million more than even his closest competitor. That 2 million can do so much. That can take you from a 4.5 defender to João Pedro and an extra million. So you've got a lot that you can do with that spare money. And if you're not captaining him anyway, if you're more bullish on a Palmer, Salah, Saka draft, then it does make sense now to take this opportunity away at what has been the best defence in the league so far, followed by Nottingham Forest at home, who have also been pretty decent defensively. I think it's a good time to jump off if you're going to do it at all. And yeah, like outside of Haaland, Lewis has been just a nightmare to own. I think City are very easy to play through at the moment. There's a lack of control in their build-up play. And yeah, it just means that the big chances that they're conceding at the moment are much more common than they have been in the past. So again, I don't really see many prospects in defence right now. It's another reason a lot of managers are moving towards that double Arsenal defence, because like some Gvardiol aren't really cutting it outside of the attacking returns. And yeah, you just don't see that continuing at the rate it has done so far. So yeah, I'm a bit like you. I'm probably looking at divesting. Lewis might stay for a week or two more whilst I sort out other issues, and he can sit on my bench, but I'm not particularly fussed about owning any of them in this little patch of fixtures at all.
I did see that Gvardiol had managed to get a 0.87 XG against Spurs. So, I mean, he was playing as a winger a lot as well, like in terms of the on-pitch positioning. So he's maybe one that if you did own, you might kind of give some consideration to keeping hold of. But yeah, if it's at the expense of getting an Arsenal defender right now, I do think that you're kind of obstructing. You're getting to probably what's the best for your team. But yeah, if you do want to hold Gvardiol, makes a lot of sense. Their conquerors this weekend, Spurs, are another interesting sort of picture. So obviously, like Slanky, people jumping off a little bit now. After bringing him in for an okay kind of little run of fixtures. You said on the pod last week that you were thinking he'd be the one who was dropping deep, which did happen, much to my chagrin. But he did get the assist though, which is obviously quite nice. And Johnson, who I think he's got like absolutely ludicrous underlying data in terms of the kind of per 90 XG. I'm pretty sure he's like third or fourth, like just below Salah or something ridiculous like that. But him being benched for Maddison scoring a couple of goals. I don't know, he wasn't directly benched for Maddison, but you know, that is kind of what happened with the team, and Kulusevski went out there. I own him, and I'm happy that he scored because he holds the value. But I think that's probably the death knell for him in my team for the time being. I mean, it's difficult to kind of say you're going to divest, though, isn't it, Sam? Because I mean, you've got Porro too, but like, I've got Slanky. I'm very kind of happy to keep hold of Slanky for a little while, actually, because he's got the X-Mins. I say that now, and come game week 15, there's me panic selling because I need João Pedro. But right now, it does sort of feel like, they do feel like a bit of a hold if it's not Johnson. You've got Slanky, you've got Porro. Is it Slanky who's going for Cunha for you?
Potentially, it's one route that would enable me to get to Saka in game week 14. But I'm open to holding either of them right now. They're the sort of players that I probably wouldn't like rip my team up right now, considering the fixtures to come. Obviously, they're in the mixed zone: Fulham, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Southampton. Southampton's obviously the best one of the bunch in game week 16. They're decent enough fixtures that you can easily hold on to them without them being problematic, especially considering the team XG being the second best in the entire league right now. And on the eye, you can kind of tell that they're just all out attack all the time. They're not going to give up their principles. And attacking assets like Johnson, Solanke, Porro as well, and Son, even if his minutes are a little bit reduced at the moment, are all going to get decent data over the next few game weeks. It's just, we've already discussed a number of teams: Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, I suppose a little bit, Brighton, Wolves, that also all have probably arguably better fixtures and players in and around the same price points, if not cheaper in certain cases, that if you were looking at trying to squeeze in an extra premium elsewhere, Spurs players who, I wouldn't say they're overpriced by any means, but they are in that little marginal price bracket above the cheaper assets. They're mid-priced. You could look at divesting one of them if it was as a make weight to bring in a premium elsewhere. So for me, that's basically what they've become. Over the next few game weeks, I'm very happy to hold them until I need the money. And when I need the money, i.e. for Saka, I could sell Solanke, I could sell Porro. I'll make that decision when I get to that decision being a factor for me. And whichever one feels like less of the threat going forwards, I'll probably get rid of. But yeah, happy enough to hold. And I think they will continue to score points pretty consistently.
No, I'm with you on that. Liverpool, who are in this just by dint of having City next, and then Newcastle, but then they've got Everton and Fulham on the other side of it. Salah obviously is staying around. If Trent was fit, I feel like I would have had more of a decision this week, and it would have kind of been a bit of a curveball. But not having him, obviously, again, frees up a lot of money. The likes of kind of Konate, there's probably a few Van Dijks kind of pinging around. I did kind of tweet post on Blue Sky the other day that Darwin's starting, in case anyone cares, and people were like, oh yeah, no, I've got him. But it does kind of feel like a one-man band, similar to Chelsea here. I'm not sure that there's going to be any kind of additions to that, and we'll talk about kind of the captaincy in a little bit. In the interest of time, maybe we move on to Bournemouth, because you've got Semenyo, and obviously he's now had his ban, but still performing pretty well. They've got Wolves away, the game's going to miss. Spurs at home, which is obviously a good attacking game. Ipswich away in 15, Fulham in 16. So, you're kind of, he's got his little rest against Wolves, and then he's got 3 good attacking games coming. But I'm pretty sure that most people are going to be getting rid. And I know that we'll look at the best transfers in a little bit. But I know that he's kind of been bombed out. I think he's got over 100,000 transfers out for Semenyo at the moment. Like Evan Nilsson, who's the joint top scorer in terms of FPL points, is still there, but no real interest in defence. I do love Milos Kerkez just because he's a manager legend for me at the moment, and got promoted with Frankfurt. I've taken to AC Milan with me. Performs very, he does develop really well. A 5-star complete win back. But anyway, that aside, they've got a long-term decent horizon in terms of the fixtures. But I think that they kind of really kick off around game week 15. But I guess 14 is a quite good attacking game, as I've mentioned. You're probably going to be getting rid of Semenyo, I assume.
Absolutely not. I'm keeping him 100%.
Good man. I'd be doing the same thing too.
Yeah. No, I'm not getting rid of him. No way. The only temptation I had, I think I messaged you on the evening, was I noticed I had the exact money to get rid of Semenyo and Solanke to bring in João Pedro and Saka. And it would have meant that I kept Dominic Calvert-Lewin basically, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it to myself, especially not for a hit either. That was the only way I was getting rid of Semenyo. I'm still pretty bullish on him. The shot volume is high. His underlying attacking data is still good. And I love the fixture run even after Wolves and the suspension is out of the way. And the more managers who sell him, the better, because I've got him more differential. So more than happy to own him ahead of Spurs, Ipswich, West Ham. Obviously, I've got a little bit of a risk this week having him suspended on my bench as my 8th attacker, but hopefully I'll be able to weather that storm and own him out the back end of it. And I'm more than happy to have him for the foreseeable. I still think at his price, he's one of the best assets in that bracket. Much more attacking than like a Rodgers, for instance. So I don't think it's even a conversation. A quick one back on Liverpool. I don't think we mentioned it. Is speaking of suspensions, Konate is now on 4 yellows. So I don't think anyone's buying him, especially this week ahead of Man City. But because he's got 4 yellows as well, he might easily serve that suspension fairly soon too. So just want to note, just wanted to cover that off. But yeah, I'm 100% holding on to Semenyo as long as there aren't like drastic injuries all around my side and I need to start selling other players for hits. I really want to own him for Spurs at home, followed by Ipswich, West Ham. So yeah, no problem for me whatsoever.
I think he's a very good kind of hold, isn't he? And he was always going to be that. Villa, you mentioned Rodgers there. They're in the mix just due to the Champions League also playing a role. I know the fixture on paper, Chelsea away, Brentford at home, Southampton at home, which obviously really good games, and Forest away. The only reason they're in the mix here, I know people might see that, is just because there's Juventus midweek here, and after Southampton there's RB Leipzig, so that casts a big shadow of doubt over the ex-mins for a lot of their key men, I'd say.
Yes.
Like if you do get a start in the Brentford game, for example, you may be bracing yourself for a rest in the Southampton game on next weekend. If you're a Watkins, maybe even you're a Rodgers owner. I know Bundy is fit as well, so he can play in that sort of tennis role.
And Barkley potentially.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot going on there, and it does sort of feel like they are in the don't buy, don't sell category.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that the only iffy one is Watkins, who has like broken his scoring streak, or broken his scoring duck rather. But because he's more expensive than a lot of other strikers that are probably going to provide really good value, and as we've already seen this season, his minutes have been managed with options all around him to come in. I think, he's unfortunately the fixtures are really good, but I don't think I'd back him to get much more than 70 minutes on average over this period. So I think there might be better ones elsewhere, which is unfortunate because on paper he could explode in any given one of these games and you might miss a haul, but I think it's going to be too inconsistent. Rodgers, I mean, I don't think there's massive upside there. Obviously, he's a really talented young player and will get better in terms of the underlying attacking data. But in this fixture period in particular, a bit like Watkins, like you mentioned, I do expect minutes to be managed a little bit and a bit of rotation. So I'm happy enough to hold on to him, but I'm not massively excited having him over this next little stretch.
Yeah, he's like the deluxe 8th attacker, isn't he? Effectively, at the moment. And he like I'm pretty sure I saw a rotation between him and João Pedro, which works really well. So those two together at kind of 11 million all in do work quite nicely as it stands. Man United's Everton away, Everton at home, Arsenal away, Forest at home, City away. Team in transition. It does kind of feel like you give your Bruno Fernandes, who I assume is the only one out there. If you've got Nani, you're obviously keeping him. You give him Everton and then you reassess around the Arsenal time. He will still produce, but I don't know. It's early days really for Amorim and what's going on with the system. So, it does feel like one of those where it's don't buy, don't sell. Newcastle tonight. I'm sorry, I'm speaking on a little bit here, Sam. But Newcastle tonight have not performed very well at all. It's like a very sort of offbeat performance from them. Don't know how worried to be. Obviously, haven't seen the second half. It does seem like it's been a bit of a blip, but the likes of Gordon haven't really been performing, and that's been kind of part of a slight kind of downturn. Crystal Palace away, Liverpool at home, Brentford away, Leicester at home. 3 out of 4 of them very, very good attacking fixtures. So I'm still kind of quite okay with owning Isak. I really like what I saw from Lewis Hall. Really performs outstandingly in the first half. I thought he was really good. There was one moment where he flashed a kind of I think it was a shot across goal,
Yeah.
and Isak almost got on the end of it, which would have obviously been dreamland. But I mean, I'm pretty happy with the decision to own him. Isak as well. It's just one of those games. It kind of seems like he's now apparently playing right wing, because Wilson came on. But yeah, a bit of a have and hold. But I'm assuming the love for Isak, even though he's on the apparently being slated to rise tonight, is going to be one of those who may lose out to people going to Jackson now a little bit more.
Yeah, quite possibly. And the fact that Wilson's back is maybe a little bit of a fly in the ointment, that he might play right wing a little bit more often. But he's pretty decent off the right as well. So I don't want to lose hope in him too quickly just after what seems like poor performance. Obviously, he took the offside goal really well, which, by the way, was a phenomenal pass through from Lewis Hall, I believe, too. So there are little flashes with Newcastle. They've been pretty decent recently, and against Crystal Palace, I would expect maybe a bit of rejuvenation there. Liverpool's a tough fixture, but then afterwards, like you said, Brentford, Leicester, that's fine. And I didn't buy Isak for just a short-term kind of move. I like him over a pretty extended run. So I'm happy to hold on to him for a little while. Jackson obviously seems great, and there's a lot going for him as well, but he doesn't have penalties. He does have a lot of other teammates that maybe could take minutes off of him, whereas with Isak, I'd be surprised if he got the early subs even in the midweek stuff. And with Isak as well, I just think he's by far the most important player they've got. So yeah, I am a little bit frustrated with how tonight has gone, but overall, still pretty happy to hold on to him.
Yeah, absolutely the same. West Ham, I'm going to pair with Brentford, who are at the beginning of the bad, just because West Ham are in the mixed by dint of having Arsenal up next. What a difference a couple of games can make for them. If they do well against Arsenal, obviously got the surprise 2-0. I think that the Wolves victory and the Spurs victory as well this weekend, the Spurs thrashing the Man City this weekend, have been the three results that no one really had on the card. It's interesting because West Ham do start a good run of fixtures after game week 14. Leicester away, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away within this. But that run does extend quite a long way as far as I remember. I think it's kind of until Boxing Day. Even they've got Liverpool, Man City, then they've got Fulham and Palace at home. So Jared Bowen, who's the top point scorer for them, the top for underlying, got another assist tonight. Mr. Dependable, X-Mins kind of pretty locked for him. I think that he could be a good jump off from Bumo at Brentford. So Brentford have got Leicester at home, and then Villa away, Newcastle at home, Chelsea away. This is actually top for the underlying data for them. So a few of owners of him, he had a bit of a mare against Everton, a couple of big chances missed. Those two teams seem sort of interlocks a little bit because both of them you kind of flip from one to the other. I'm not saying you flip a Pinnock to a Emerson or a Kilman or something like that, but they do look like if you're not kind of looking to, like I am, upgrade Bumo to Saka, that does look like a very obvious sort of move over, doesn't it, midweek to go to Bowen, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like it a lot. And if Bumo wasn't likely to become someone else, I would be pretty interested in Bowen. He's, like you said, Mr. Consistent over the last few years, ticks along really nicely without necessarily ever being the most popular of picks. And he's doing it again this season. So I could quite easily see him being a very good option over the next little patch of fixtures. You can jump off of Bumo after Leicester and then get to Leicester again with Bowen. So it's quite a nice little double there, followed by Wolves at home, Bournemouth away. Yeah, I like it a lot. And I think quite a few managers will be going there.
Yeah, see our edge pieces for why you're selling Bumo in game week 14, despite having as a price rise and despite him doing well for you, it's probably a good idea. And I think Bumo as well, what's been really interesting is the past 3 weeks, his expected data's comparatively at least fallen off a bit of a cliff. Like you're looking at kind of 0.5, 0.6 as the average, and last few it's been kind of 0.1 against Fulham. He got 0.01, didn't even register a shot. So it's been notable, maybe a change in tactics, like James Planet was saying, and may have affected them too. So after Leicester, I think it's a good time to drop off. Talk about him in the captaincy, of course. Fulham, Palace. I'm sure there's a smattering of Robinsons sort of hanging around, but kind of broadly bad fixtures for both London teams. Fulham have got Tottenham away, Brighton at home, Arsenal at home, and Liverpool away. Palace have got Newcastle at home, Ipswich away, Man City at home, and Brighton away. Both teams, Fulham obviously outperformed an awful lot, and there will be a few more players, Robinson, Jimenez's, things like that. If you do own a Palace player, I think probably it is time to I'm sure you've gotten rid already, frankly. But yeah, it may be time for a Fulham player to either hide them on the bench. So if it's an Anderson, you've had Robinson since 4.5. If you've got Jimenez, I think it's time to kind of move him up to a Cunha if you can. Nottingham Forest, Sam, if you've got Woods, would you be keeping Woods? And I think if you've got a defender, again, it's one that you kind of hide on your bench, isn't it?
Yeah, we said it a few weeks ago that the fixtures were running out. The fixtures did run out. They've got this one little green one against Ipswich, but Ipswich have equipped themselves pretty well recently. And I've had a few questions on my own channel over the last day whether a lot of managers are looking at Wood to João Pedro even this week ahead of Ipswich at home, and really trying to map that one out and think it through. Okay, yes, on paper, Wood has got a great fixture, but Ipswich have had a lot more about them recently defensively than Southampton have. And Wood doesn't quite seem as important to the team, or, well, I mean, he was benched this week, so how important can he be? Versus João Pedro, who seems really fundamental to everything good Brighton are doing at the moment. And especially if it sets you up well for the long term, and you're doing it for free, it does make sense. I don't think Wood is a instant sell this week, considering the fixture, but there are a lot of good other players around his price point now. And next week, certainly, you probably will want to get rid and won't want to look back at getting him for quite a while now. So if you want to make that move a week early, for someone like João Pedro, as long as we get news that he's fit, of course, then it does make a lot of sense to do so. And you're not just setting yourself up for this week, but also for the extended run that Brighton have as well. So yeah, I can see why most people are getting rid.
Yeah, absolutely. And to end, Southampton, Everton, Southampton dibbling maybe 4.5. Maybe in a 3.343. That's pretty much all I've got to say on them, really. Unfortunately, Sam. And Everton, top underlying data. Calvert-Lewin. Yes, it's quite a nice segue, I think. Obviously, neither of these teams are going to want to be holding anyone. We've both got Mikalenko. I feel like he might stick around, be third bench, something like that, just because he's playing in 4.3. I mean, that's fine. It's basically analogous to a 4.0 you kind of hide. But it really does feel like it's, we're really at the dregs now. So maybe we move this on, everything that we've kind of just had a whistle-stop tour through, to think about our own teams. And as a Calvert-Lewin owner, as far as we know, Sam, you spoiled it. You smoothed it on YouTube. But as a Calvert-Lewin ex-owner, Sam, it's definitely time to move from a player like that. And you must feel absolutely liberated. And the Shawshank Redemption, the guy standing in the rain, hands up, it must feel like you right now.
Yeah, relief is the word. That was one of the worst moves I've ever made in FPL, bringing him in on wildcard in game week 6. Any of you who went there as well, we really went through it all. Absolutely no returns since we got him, or since I got him, and very little to get excited about. Meanwhile, every single other striker at his price point that was even getting minutes was getting goals and getting bonus points and getting assists and everything, and just so far behind. Lost a lot of money on him, and also lost money from not going for others. Yeah, couldn't have really gone any worse. So pressing that button on Saturday night before all the games were even over was a feeling of pure bliss. So yeah, glad to see the back of him. João Pedro is in. I did make the move after João Pedro had finished the game and obviously went off early, but it seems like everything's fine there. So yeah, a little bit of a risk there, but honestly, I couldn't live with myself, even if I had to take a hit later on in the week, because of my early move. I couldn't live with myself having DCL in for another game week. So João Pedro's in. If that means I take a -4 because of an injury elsewhere, so be it. But I needed to get that done one way or another. And Semenyo, sat on my bench right now, not planning on taking any hits. And then, I've got moves in mind for next week, and bringing in João Pedro early to release a little bit extra money before he gets price rises was kind of crucial to that as well, to give me a bit more flexibility next week on who I'm going to be selling.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's going to be potentially a couple of hits going on. I would have liked to have sort of set everything up before this week to stop me taking a hit midweek, but it does feel like one of those things, especially because we're both in a situation right now where the route to Saka is Bumo, and there's no way there was. It would be great if, obviously, don't wish injury on the player, etc., but it would be great if there was like, Bumo's got something that's going to, he's got ill, he's got a cold, he's going to be out for the Leicester game. That would be just good because you could just move everything up, can't you? But yeah, no, you had to get rid of João Pedro, and your team was so much better for it, honestly.
DCL, get in João Pedro.
Just get rid of DCL, and your team was so much better for it, honestly. I just don't want to say his name, Sam.
Yeah, no, it's horrible.
No, you got really good for this week coming up. To be honest, our teams aren't that different, are they?
No, they're becoming similar again. But yeah, I'm happy with the bus team at the moment. Obviously, we've got some Champions League in Europe midweek. A lot of the players that are playing midweek are either very good in terms of their injury track record, or like Palmer, not even registered for the competition. So I am crossing my fingers. I am touching wood. Hopefully it'll be okay. But yeah, obviously a risk has been taken here, and we'll come on to that. But it sets me up nicely for this week, sets me up nicely for next week as well. And I've got quite a clear pathway now on what I want to do for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. As for me then, for what we've just kind of discussed and what we've learned, a bit of spring cleaning for me continues. I'm pretty much slated to take another couple of 4s. So basically that means 4 -4s in a row. That game week 6 wildcard, Sam, is going to have to go down in infamy. Honestly, like an absolute horror move. Like loads of the picks there have been absolute duds, and I've just spent loads of transfers. Oh, there's a couple that I'm going to be correcting from after that, but a lot of the time it's just correcting what at the time seemed like a really good pick. So I'm not going to kind of really flagellate myself about that, but it just haven't quite worked out. But this week, Johnson is going to go for Matoma. There's the move that I really wanted to do last week. Didn't quite do it because I wanted Isaac. But that's definitely happening this week. And I'm currently planning an additional -4, which is Lewis to Van Hecker. So Johnson, there's no guarantees now a starter because of Maddison's good performance. And Matoma, really good run. Already waxed lyrical about him enough. Plus the João Pedro ownership means I need to contest that. Brighton, he's top of the underlyings for Brighton and fairly nailed. So same predicament as rest of them really in terms of too many cooks. And Van Heckeren is just more of a kind of a long-term bench man. Who can play as well. You know, I don't want to own Lewis anymore. Plus, Southampton this week is probably the best time to buy and play, even if taking hit for a defender is pretty rubbish. And crucially as well, both of those moves also free up a tiny smidgen of cash, which really helped me because game week 14 is obviously same as you, Saka in, Garnacho and Bumo. I've got 0.0, I think it is, if I kind of keep Lewis. But I don't think that's going to stay. So I do need to kind of free up 0.2 at some point. It does mean an extra hit, but I think there's a bit of a benefit, I think, to having a Van Hecker in, which is, again, not particularly sexy, but just was kind of a little bit necessary. So game week 40 midweek, Saka for Bumo. 0.2 million, I think, down it is because Saka's rising, and Bumo, I think, is actually close to drop tonight. But yeah, after going Isaac this week, my new route to Saka is selling Bumo, and I can't do that pre-Leicester, and that's financed by Garnacho to a 4.9 or a 4.8. So I think it'll be a 4.8 now, which is probably going to be Ahmad or Enzo. I don't think I'm going to, if it's a 4.9, it's Ahmad, just because he might play a lot, but who knows? And Enzo, again, I'll have 2 Chelsea, probably similar to you now in retrospect, not particularly interested in a defender. So it would be kind of, I'll still have space for Jackson, I think. If not, I'll just go for Dibbling. I don't really care too much. It will be someone who's kind of on the bench. But the main thing is I end up with a front 7 of Matoma, Saka, Palmer, Salah, Cunha, Isaac and Solanke by game week 14.
Strong.
And then Solanke could be potentially moved on later if needs the free cash.
But
I mean, that's pretty good. You've got the free premiums in. Matoma, I think, kind of covers in inverted commas the João Pedro thing. I can get Solanke out for João Pedro if I need to. Really like Solanke's X minutes in a team which are doing well in the XG. Isaac again. I mean, I think similar to you, similar sentiment. Didn't just buy him for one game, and Cunha has got a run of fixtures to last, and the captaincy can be pretty well split between Palmer, Salah, and maybe Saka if needed. So I think it's just a bit of spring cleaning, and just kind of shaping up for the congestion. As I said, if it would have been lovely if I could have got a lot of, if I'd have kind of taken the hits out this week. If I knew Saka was playing, I think that I'd probably still be in the 3-5-2. Probably sat here now with Saka. At least, but I mean, them's the breaks. I don't think I could have gone there this week, really, because we didn't really know anything, and I think the fitness test was after midday, after the deadline, so it would have been kind of a stab in the dark. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with how the boss team will look once I made the moves with the two Brighton players, and it's very much about getting rid of the players with the bad fixtures, as we spoke about a minute ago, and bringing in players with the good over the next 4 and over kind of a longer period. So. Yeah, I can justify all of these moves, just about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, it's a strong looking team, even with the -4. I think it pays off. You've also, like you mentioned briefly there, got a lovely little break glass in case of emergency option later on down the line. And you can get to João Pedro if you need to downgrade any of those forwards to release some funds elsewhere for whatever reason. So, yeah, you're going to have a nice deep bench too, with an additional defender that can reasonably play that I won't have. So yeah, overall, really nicely balanced side, set up well for the congested period with a few rotationable, is that a word? Options. Rotatable. Yeah, God, what, it must be getting late. It's a long day. Rotatable is the correct term. Options on the bench. So yeah, very, very strong looking side. You've even got Fabianski as well as a second playing keeper right now. So yeah, tons of depth, looking strong. Very jealous of Cunha. Yeah, overall, not too many notes.
Can't wait till it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Let's move to the Gameweek ahead preview. 1 hour 10 in, dear me. So the Kneejerk this week, making early transfers. We've just heard that Sam's made an early transfer. Did it on, was it last night or the night before?
I did it Saturday night, yeah.
Saturday night, yeah. Understandable, though, with Calvert-Lewin being given the boot. Maybe keep it brief because we've gone on for a little while. But early transfers during the season, at the start, I think it's kind of a bit more, probably, especially in the first 4 weeks, there's no kind of midweek stuff. Absolutely fine normally. You'd be really, really unlucky to have like a training ground injury or something like that. But in times like these, should we be more careful?
Yeah, probably. Unless you own Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But yeah, no, it's never advisable to go early because there are risks attached. But more often than not, the players don't tend to get injured during the week. There are midweek fixtures this week, so there is a risk. A lot of the players like Salah, Gabriel, Raya are in my side, have really good track records for injury, but there is always a risk attached. But I came to terms with the fact that no matter what I did this week, I am going to sell Dominic Calvert-Lewin for João Pedro. And then if I need to take a hit, it just is what it is. So be it. One way or another, it was going to happen. So I might as well make the move early if I'm that sure on it. Again, I wouldn't go out of my way to advise it, but I think it was just something I needed to do and sort of rip off the plaster, as it were. What I would say is next week, when we do have the really congested fixture period, the midweek fixture is a Premier League fixture. So you can probably get away with moving a bit earlier because they won't be playing in between the two. So if you want to make some slightly quicker transfers then absolutely fine, I think. But yeah, definitely not one to take my own advice this week. And I would normally hold off, but I just couldn't resist anymore. I've waited too long.
Yeah, with a player like that, it's probably okay. And if Johnson was looking like he was going to drop, or Garnacho, who I've also got 0.1 million in, was going to drop, I could actually do that either way. I would have probably sold, done the same move on Saturday, because Bryson didn't have a midweek game. So it kind of, again, it's situational, isn't it? The other kind of thing on this, I did see a few people posting, they're at 0.0 to do a particular move at the moment, and it was all sort of like out with the old, in with the new. So, selling Haaland and getting Salah in and a couple of edge pieces. There can definitely be the temptation just to get it done, especially for a 0.0, rather than wait till kind of the deadline with all the information. I mean, I think probably, again, early doors is absolutely fine. It's just when you get to around now, especially if you're taking kind of a -4 on a Saturday or Sunday night, it does feel little bit more fraught with risk to me. And there's always kind of another option that presents itself, isn't there? So maybe with that, there'd be like a hint of caution, perhaps. But I mean, broadly, right now, if you're kind of making moves, you're always going to make it. There is always that sort of argument. Yeah, just get it done, get it sorted, right?
Yeah, for sure. And look, play it your own way. I see a lot of players making moves very early and then kind of forgetting about FPL for the week, and that's absolutely fine. Just know that there is risk. There is always a chance that players go down injured in midweek, even without matches, by the way, as well. Training ground injuries do happen. They're fairly rare, but they do happen. So there's always a risk. But if you're chasing price rises, if you're tight on budget and you are absolutely certain on what you want to do that week, then you know the risks and you can go for it. You can make a calculated gamble, and that's basically what I've done this week. So yeah, fingers crossed it pays off. If not, it's going to cost me -4. So that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Yep, no, fair enough. Right, okay, so on to the best transfers for this week. Quite a lot going on, unsurprisingly. Players that we've already mentioned, so Cunha, getting close to 500,000 transfers in for him. That's no surprise whatsoever. I think the days of him being a dice man are long gone, so I'm very happy to have had a couple of weeks. João Pedro, almost 300,000 transfers in for him. Saka, very close to that. And then Salah, people kind of now losing their patience with Haaland, who has engendered 400,000 sales already. So
wow,
that EO is kind of slowly but surely trending downwards. It's 50. I'm pretty sure I checked earlier. It's like he's below 60% owned now, whereas at one point kind of nudging 80. So it kind of shows what a difference a few weeks make and how many people are still playing actually. And Pedro Porro, Sam, being brought in by a lot of people. That 14 points are replicable, despite the fact that Vicario is now out for many weeks because he's done his ankle.
That's incredible, by the way. He played 60 minutes with a broken bone in his ankle.
I know, legend. On the other side, Raul Jimenez being sold. So I'm guessing because, again, quite easy to go to Pedro. Makes a lot of sense. People are still selling Luis Diaz. People are selling Trent. And people are selling Semenyo. See red flag, sell red flag. Because you can get, I don't know who you can get. I put Matoma on here because I'm looking to buy him. But yeah, a lot of that sort of makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I don't really see kind of much with that, apart from maybe selling Semenyo, which I think I'd agree with you, just isn't worth getting rid of.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Semenyo thing is the part I would disagree with out of all of that. But there are situations and teams set up with only 7 attackers, and they might need to sell Semenyo to even have a playing 11 or a playing front 7. So I'm not going to completely rule it out, but in my team, I've built it with 8 in mind, knowing that a suspension or an injury is a risk. And as long as you can hide him on your bench for 1 week, I would probably try to do so. So yeah, it's not the craziest thing in the world to be selling, but I think if there are other ways to kind of maneuver without getting rid of him, that for me would be ideal. But yeah, I can't really disagree with too many of those key movers. A lot of them do make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, elsewhere you see things like Maddison being brought in by 130,000. So there are still a lot of players who are, just biting it at whoever's done points. But it's definitely a lot different to when we did this at the start of the season, where it was just like, oh, he scored, right? He's been brought in by over 600,000 people have bought in. A Nana at Aston Villa because he's done a goal. It's definitely starting to kind of home in really on the engaged players.
You can't have a birthday every day.
No, you can't. You really can't, James. Right. Okay. So bold claims this week. No points for either of us. No. Haaland hat-trick for you. No. Salah to blank. Few. As Liverpool win by 2 or more goals versus Saints. I mean, you did pretty well in that game, honestly. Liverpool had to dig deep, didn't they?
Well, yeah, if we didn't gift them 3 goals, we looked really good for it.
Yeah. There's definitely a couple of questionable moments, weren't there?
All I'm going to say is I came on this show last week and said in all of my content, people were questioning about how much of a difference Ramsdale down to McCarthy was going to make. That's the difference it makes, okay? Do not underestimate our predisposition for giving away 3 goals and 3 points to opposition when McCarthy's in goal. Yeah, I mean, what on earth has happened there? And the Sugawara handball too. Yeah. They cashed in their voucher against us. We were unlucky. We played pretty well. Onuachu up top, absolutely marvelous. My favorite player right now, Toolpool. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We were almost certain to lose, and Salah was almost certain to do pretty well. So it was a bold claim. Fair play for going for it. I happiness hedged with the Haaland hat trick. Luckily for me, as a seller, he got nothing, so worked out quite nicely for me.
Yeah, Onuachu, the B&M stores, Ibrahimovic.
Yeah.
So one moment, I think, when he went on a run.
The no-look pass.
Wow, hilarious. Sorry, we shouldn't laugh. It's very difficult to be a big man, and Peter Crouch did very well in his time. Right, so this week, you've gone a bit bold, haven't you, on Cole? Is it going to happen?
Well, yeah, he explodes every now and then. It's been a little while. So I think he's due one. No real data to back it up, obviously. Obviously, the data's not been too bad. But Aston Villa haven't looked fantastic recently. Defensively, not the soundest of performances recently either. And I think with the Champions League focus right now, a fresh Palmer who won't be playing in Europe could easily capitalise for those on those spaces in front of the centre backs. And I'm fancying one of his rare-ish explosions. So I haven't gone for quite as bold as a hat trick, but I think 3+ returns is still bold enough. So yeah, big explosion for Cole Palmer is my bold claim.
Fair enough. I've gone for Everton to get a result against Man United, which I'm going to just say is a draw or a win. I'm not sure if that's going to pass the Forest test.
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to check. Yeah,
we'll have to check. I didn't have time to check the.
You can transform it to just a win if it doesn't.
We'll say that in case we get flagged. I mean, I don't know. I just get the impression they're going to frustrate United a little bit just by watching the game of Ipswich. Am I going to play Mikolenko? Am I going to get another, or going to bench another clean sheet of his 2 in a row? In fact, I also benched the Ipswich one in game week 8, so I've benched 3 clean sheets for Mikolenko. Am I going to bench this one? Almost definitely. So, a bit of happiness hedging potentially as well. But yes, I do I do wonder whether Dyche is going to give Amorim a welcome to the Premier League biatch in that game. Is it Ashley Young, who's one of the most sort of prolific point scorers at the moment?
Yeah, he's right up there. Yeah,
wild, absolutely wild. You know, it's evergreen. Name checks out as well, which I quite like. Right, fun thing this week. We've got a little bit of time. I've kind of purposely went a bit quicker actually earlier on, so we've got a bit more time to discuss this. The best captain. So awful lot going on. I think that if we didn't see the decimation of Man City against Spurs, and Salah was going to Salah. I don't think Salah would be anywhere near as to the conversation. In the same way that, as you kind of rightly pointed out earlier on, when I said that Palmer maybe didn't have the best game against Leicester. I mean, he's not on the graphic here, but he was the one that many people were going to think, oh yeah, well I'll just go for him in game week 13 if they don't have Haaland anymore. And obviously Haaland and Salah are playing each other. You've also got the likes of Mbumo, ludicrously good home record, but as noted earlier on, has kind of fallen off a little bit in the underlying data. Even interest in João Pedro or even Cunha against Bournemouth at home. So quite a lot going on, Sam, in terms of the captaincy. I'm currently kind of just defaulting to Salah. I didn't even mention it earlier on, actually, when our teams were on it. But there's lots of actual ways that I could go with this. I do think that Salah is going to be the chip leader in terms of EO, but I do think it'll be a bit more kind of split pin than we've seen for, again, a little while, which is, again, to this season's merit. It's really, really cool that that's going on. Where are you currently leaning? I'm just not sure.
I'm more sure. I'm definitely captaining Salah, no question. But I think with all of the other ones, Palmer is the only other one that might tempt me a little bit. But with Mbumo, I think he's had 1 shot on goal in 3 game weeks now. And with these easier fixtures, they tend to play a bit more of a front 3. I don't know if you've noticed, where Mbumo ends up a little bit wider on the right. It's the harder fixtures where he plays more centrally, where they play the back 5, and he usually goes up top alongside a Wissa or maybe now a Thiago as well. So I don't know. So that I still like the matchup. I still think he's a great pick, but captainable when he's only had 1 shot, I think, in 3 game weeks. not for me quite. Pedro, the data's good. The minutes aren't quite there yet. So again, a good option this week. Captainable, maybe not quite for me. And that for me now just leaves the likes of Palmer and Salah. That could go either way. You could read it as, okay, Salah is just inevitable. City look easy to turn over at the back at the moment. They're giving up twice, if not three times the amount of big chances per 90 than they have done in the past. And the XG over the last 3 game weeks has actually been the highest in the league. So I like Salah for that reason. Palmer, you could maybe veer to as a home banker with a better fixture on paper. But for me, I think it's Salah all day long. I think he's just so inevitable. 1 return's good enough for a 10-pointer for him at the moment. And honestly, I'd back him to get 2, maybe even 3 against City, the way things are shaping up right now. So yeah, it's all on Salah for me.
Okay, fair. I mean, if you're kind of down the doldrums, it's just because it's a City game, isn't it? So there's going to be amongst kind of less engagement players, maybe they'll see the City game. I think it's still on the FDR. Well, I'm sure it is on the FDR, still rated as a 5.
Oh yeah,
and maybe that will make people think, hey, I'm not sure I can do it. But it does feel like after this week, what we've seen, there's going to be kind of a slight reaction to that in terms of where the captaincy kind of goes. I did kind of have it bust on Bumo like when the game reopened again. But I admit I'm one of those people who has kind of just gone, right, well, I think probably it's going to have to be Salah. But I think there are definitely options there this week. I think that, it's worth it remembering that there's obviously always this sort of recency thing, what's just happened, availability heuristic. So like if Palmer had scored that goal that Madueke got himself in the way of, then suddenly we'd have more of a discussion maybe about this. Do you think that's right?
I do think that's right. I think Palmer's probably just going to get overlooked because of that, and he is a good option for sure. But I am very keen on the Man City matchup for Salah. If you look at the way Man City have conceded goals recently, the fact that Gvardiol can't help but get forward down that left-hand side right now, there's going to be spaces. Liverpool are an incredible counter-attacking team, one of the best in the world, and Man City are going to pin them back at times. Every time Liverpool spring, Salah's going to be at the forefront of that. And down that right wing, I think he's going to get a lot of joy with Gvardiol maybe on occasion losing his defensive positioning to try and get into a more advanced, more aggressive position on the pitch. I think Salah exploits that. So I really do just love the matchup this week. And even in the limited minutes that Brendan Johnson got against them, he capitalised. So I really like that. But yes, you are right. To revert back to your original point, the recency bias against, or anti-bias, I suppose, against Palmer for not having returned recently should kind of be put to one side. I think in his own right, he is a good captaincy option this week with good data. It's, again, a pretty decent matchup. I just like that matchup for Salah all the bit more.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm probably going to just stick with that because I've had so many weeks just not keeping it simple that even though it's Man City, it does kind of feel like that's the simple call in some ways. I think, there's a lot more kind of to discuss over the next kind of few weeks, but this week it does really, I don't know. I do think there are a lot more options on the table. It does kind of feel like I just kind of want to just make that decision early on. I mean, we'll see what happens in Real Madrid, of course, and there's lots of kind of stuff going on this week. But yeah, come the Friday deadline, worth mentioning. I suspect I may end up kind of sticking on Palmer, if not, stick on Salah. If not, I'll probably end up on Bumo. I think Bumo's got my advice at the moment. I think he'll probably keep it, just because it's a home game against a promoted club. Who are managing this as well, but it may well be it goes the other way where they really hated Cooper, much like United when Van Nistelrooy took over. So maybe we'll see that. But yeah, okay, cool. On the Egyptian King it goes.
Yeah, sounds good. But yeah, don't let me put anyone else off. That's just one man's opinion, and I'm ranked 1.2 million. So what the hell do I know? Anyway. Thank you all so much for listening again to Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at WGTA or myself at FPL Pricey. On Twitter as well is WGTA_FPL. Again, just FPL Pricey on there, as I am on Instagram and Threads. And it's WGTA.FPL on there for the main pod link. If you did enjoy the pod, We'd really appreciate it if you could give us a follow on those social channels, but also if you could give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening, that'd be great. And if you could leave a like and subscribe on YouTube, that would also be really, really appreciated.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. I hope you get a good night's sleep after swimming to be on the pod tonight. I hope you enjoyed the pods, and we look forward to FPL going absolutely berserk. Yeah, it should be really good fun. We hope it's just you prepping to cook in that manic period on the Whistle Stop tour today. Still figuring out the pod plan for next week. It's my first week of work in my new job. I think we'll go for a fullish pod on Monday, just a preview on Thursday, so just kind of the notional second half, but in this pod it was kind of done in 20 minutes, and then a full fullish pod again the Monday after that. So yeah, speak to you very, very soon. Have a good week.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist?